Hello and welcome to Films for the Very First Time. My name is Jordan. With me, as always, is Casey McGeorge.
Oh, how's it going, everybody? Good to be back.
Yes, we are back discussing a film or TV show every single episode that one of us has never seen. Last week, I showed Casey Casino Royale, or not last week, last episode, I showed Casey Casino Royale, the James Bond film. And this week, what are we discussing?
We're going to journey back to 1996, my senior year of high school. I was 17 years old. Welcome to The Rock, in my worst Sean Connery
Wasn't bad.
impression ever. No, it was horrible. I know it was horrible. I knew it as it was coming out of my mouth. We are going to watch Michael Bay's second directed feature film, The Rock. As I stated, directed by Michael Bay. Story by David Weisberg and Douglas S. Cook. Released on June 7th of 1996 with a budget of $75 million. Worldwide box office was 335.6. So it was a financial success. If you could not guess, it stars Sean Connery. It also stars Nicolas Cage, Ed Harris, Michael Biehn, if I pronounce that correctly, which would add him as a second movie to hit to the list for him. If you're still keeping track.
Yes.
William Forsythe, John Spencer, Vanessa Marcel, Joaquin Woodbine, Claire Fulani, someone we just recently said goodbye to, Tony Todd, and it also stars a young Dr. Cox, John C. McGinley. One thing that is amazing as you go through some of these older movies is you start to see people you've seen from other movies and TV shows before they made it really big, before they became like more household names of people who really knew who they were. And then it's hard to imagine them in that part sometimes because all I can see is Dr. Cox as a Marine. But hey, man, I mean, he's been a working actor for quite a while. I'm sure there's plenty of other things he's been in that if I saw it now, I'd be like, wait a minute, what?
It's always interesting because there's also Anthony Clark in here. If anybody remembered watching the CBS sitcom Yes Dear, that was on, created by the guy who created Raising Hope and My Name Is Earl. Yes Dear. Then he hosted Last Comic Standing for a bit too. He's the hair cutter in this movie.
Okay, so let's just talk about that guy right now. We'll get to that scene later, but look, the '90s was a much different time. Let's just poke down at homosexual people and make fun of them as a gay hairdresser. Obviously, just not cool. Wouldn't work now. I was 17. I probably giggled at it, thought it was funny back then. Obviously, as I'm watching this last night, I was like, "Oof, that is wow. That was kind of rough." That's another thing is looking back at some of these movies as we go back in time. A lot, and especially with a lot of my movies because they come from I'm older than you, so they come from a different time period. You look back at some things and it's like, oof, that's a rough one. Different times doesn't mean it was okay back then, but that's just what they did. And then you look at it now and it's like, that definitely couldn't get made and be put on screen today.
And I'm pretty sure I think Anthony Clark is actually gay in real life as well. That's
I'm not
another.
saying anything on that.
No,
I'm
I'm just
just
saying
saying
that's
like
another layer to it. You know, he's probably having to play a little bit more of a
a
stereotypical
feminine,
role of
yeah,
himself. Yeah.
stereotypical character, like I said, and especially back then, a lot of times people really just had to go along, and even if they were decent stars, and I'm not saying he wasn't the star or anything, he probably made it bigger since then. But especially starting out, you can't really. There's probably not much you can really say or do because it wouldn't take much for them to replace you on a whim. So sometimes you
Mm-hmm.
probably just have to go along. Even though if you're looking at it yourself, you're like, this sucks and this is not good. But it's either that or get fired. So, you know, I can't blame people for a lot of times probably just going through the way.
Right.
Okay. A mild mannered chemist and an ex con must lead the Counter Strike team when a rogue group of military men, led by a renegade general, threaten a nerve gas attack from Alcatraz Island against San Francisco. So I already stated, in 1996, I just graduated high school that May. I was getting ready to ship off to go to basic training in Fort Knox, Kentucky. So I was enjoying my last summer of freedom for a while. I don't think I saw this in the theater. I believe I probably saw this on VHS when I got to Korea. We had a little video rental store on base out there, and I think they were only like $1 or $2 for like a couple of nights, so it wasn't hard to like just go down there and see what they had, and I probably heard decent things about it. I think that was the first time I remember seeing it. I'd say this was also this is one of those movies that now gets lost because of streaming.
Mm-hmm.
A, because it probably has hopped around a few times to different streaming services, but B, during the heyday of cable, this was the kind of movie that would pop up on a Saturday or Sunday or a random weekday night on like TNT, the TBS, the USA Network, something like that. And let's say it's like 7:15, and there's a football or basketball or baseball game starting at 8 o'clock. There's really nothing on it. You're flipping through the channels. You might pop in on this one for the next 30, 45 minutes or so to get, to wait until whatever it is that you're going to watch at 8 o'clock starts. So this is one that people have probably seen multiple times, maybe not all in one sitting. Or they've probably seen it once or twice in one sitting, but they probably haven't seen it since in one sitting because they've watched 20 minutes here, 30 minutes here, 15 minutes here, waiting for something else to come on, or waiting for like that next half hour to hit, or that top of the hour to hit for their next show or whatever they're watching next to come on. So this is definitely one of those action adventure movies that gets lost because streaming is gone and now it's just kind of out there in ether. And unless you're searching for it, people probably aren't going to pick it up and watch it unless it's something like a podcast like this that brings it to their attention. So where were you in June of '96, and why had you not seen The Rock until now?
Gee, I was 5 years old, turning 5 in June of 1996.
Yeah, this is not a movie for
I was probably
5 year olds.
very excited for Toy Story releasing or something. Yeah, I did not see this movie. I haven't really seen a lot of Michael Bay movies, except for the Transformers movies. But like something I read on this is that this movie helped him get a 2-picture deal with Disney, which was Buena Vista Pictures. One of their That's what this movie is through as well. So this one should probably stay on the Hulu brand for a while because of that. But then he did Armageddon and Pearl Harbor, which
Made him a star.
there's actually this there used to be this attraction at Disney World at Hollywood Studios called like the it was the what's it called, like the tram ride that you would go on to, studio tour type thing that Universal has, but Disney had it too, and it would have like all these behind the scene effects things. And when you're going in, it was actually Michael Bay would be the guy on the TV being like, "Hey, I'm Michael Bay of Armageddon and Pearl Harbor, and we're gonna take you behind the scenes of movies and all that kind of stuff." And then they would like show clips of Armageddon, and they even do like this thing where they grab a guy from the crowd or a few people from the crowd and do like this special effects thing and insert them into a scene of, I think, Pearl Harbor or something. And then you would go into the tram ride and then actually go around the back lot thing. So that was my main experience with him in that. So I actually had no clue he directed this movie. I think you may have mentioned it originally, but I forgot until I saw it pop up on who directed it when I'm watching the movie.
Yeah, yeah, I'm pretty sure, as you can tell if you've seen the Transformers movies, just like we talked about with who was the director a couple episodes ago. What did we watch? Um,
Um, Probably. Are you talking about Face Off or Cameron?
yeah,
Drew
yeah,
Lies?
John Woo. How John
John
Woo
Woo.
kind of
Okay.
has a certain aesthetic, and like once you've
Yeah.
seen a John Woo movie, and then once you watch another one, you can tell even if you hadn't seen the name, like if you missed the credits somehow, eventually as you're watching, you're like, oh, this must be a John Woo movie. This is probably I'd say Michael Bay has another one like that where he has a certain aesthetic where you can once you start watching it, if somehow you didn't know it was him and you missed the credits, like you rolled into the movie theater or something, or if there's for cable you were flipping through and saw it, you'd be like, oh, this must be a Michael Bay movie. Lots of explosions and fire and things like that nature. He kind of has a certain aesthetic himself. Some people say it does. They're good forms of entertainment, but not necessarily good movies. Some people don't enjoy the movies that he makes, from like a story perspective or a movie perspective. Some people like me feel sometimes you just need to sit down for like 2 hours and shut your brain off and go on whatever ride they're going to take you on. Like it doesn't always have to be Shakespeare or the English Patient or give you something major. Sometimes you just want to see stuff explode or giant robots fight each other and destroy a city, right? Like I don't have to think. I just want to enjoy myself for a couple hours, and that's kind of like Michael Bay serves a great purpose for that.
You know what I would equate it to is television. I would like. I think sometimes like the hardcore film people get too in the weeds of like what is, especially nowadays, they're very upset that a lot of the franchise movies are what's doing business. But like, hey, look, sometimes I like watching smart television. I love watching serialized television, like Lost, Breaking Bad, whatever, right? But then sometimes I'll pop on a reality show, Big Brother, or stupid stuff like that to watch as like almost for strategy purposes or even just some background noise. I'll pop on something that I'm like, I don't have to pay 100% attention to this. That's kind of like there's different. That's why all these genres exist. There are different
Yeah,
things for different moods, different feelings that you have, and all that kind of stuff.
yeah. Sometimes you just want to unwind, and
Right.
you know, watching something like you said, like a Breaking Bad or a Better Call Saul, where you have to pay attention to it, and it's this deep, overarching story. Like that doesn't really help you unwind, right? Like, not saying it's not good, but like just kicking back, putting your feet up, and relaxing, that may not help with that, right? But like me, I'm on an X Files kick right now, so something like that, like I can put on, and with their Monster of the Week episodes, it's great because it's just a Monster of the Week. Like it's just this random thing. Like season 2 had one where it was a giant fluke worm type thing that happened from Chernobyl that ended up in New Jersey. They did an episode on the Jersey Devil. Then they have episodes that's this overarching thing about this whole global conspiracy and stuff. But sometimes just seeing a werewolf is what you need for 45 minutes. I don't know. It was also nominated for Best Sound at the 69th Academy Awards in March of 1997. It lost to the big winner that year of The English Patient, which
Mm.
killed in the awards that year. It was ridiculous. I think it was nominated for like 12 things and won most of them. It was the big winner that year. All right, so before we get to the story, I found out some very disheartening information last night as I was watching this about this movie.
Really?
Yes, for me and for some people. All right, I'm a veteran, said many times in here, and as I just stated, I was getting ready to join the army when this came out. March of 2003, I find myself going over to Iraq, and then again in 2005, then again in 2007. So I'd done 3 tours in Iraq. I managed to make it home, for the most part, in decent shape. Some plays, not too much. Lost a couple friends over there. The movie The Rock was the basis for false descriptions of the Iraqi chemical weapons program. Britain's secret intelligence service was led to believe Saddam Hussein was continuing to produce weapons of mass destruction by a false agent who based his reports on The Rock, according to what Great Britain had called the Chilcot Inquiry. Basically, it's kind of like how we have these Senate subcommittees, like the 9/11 Commission, the Warren Commission. Like that's their version of the commission. This one, they have inquiries. It's called the Chilcot Inquiry. More specifically, the report blamed Secret Intelligence Service, better known as MI6, head Richard Dearlove, who presented so-called quote-unquote hot intelligence about alleged weapons of mass destruction provided by an Iraqi with quote-unquote phenomenal access to high levels in the Iraqi government directly to Tony Blair, who was then Prime Minister, without first confirming its accuracy. The investigators found that references to his intelligence in government reports were overcertain and did not adequately stress uncertainties and nuance. The informant was later found to have been lying. The Chilcot report states that quote, personal intervention by Dearlove and its urgency gave added weight to a report that had not been properly evaluated and would have colored the perception of ministers and senior officials. The day after the report was published, Tony Blair conceded that he should have challenged such intelligence reports before relying on them to justify military action in Iraq. Some MI6 staff had also expressed concerns about the quality of its source. In particular, noting that an inaccurate detail about storing chemical weapons in glass containers appeared to have been taken from the 1996 action film The Rock, and expressed doubts about its reliability. Nonetheless, Foreign Secretary Jack Straw asked MI6 to use the source to provide its silver bullet intelligence. Now, I will state, I'm pretty sure, even if Great Britain and the United Kingdom had not decided to join us, I believe then President George W. Bush was determined that we were going to go into Iraq regardless. I will also state that at the time I firmly believed that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. I think it's been proven that he probably did not. But last night I was reading this, I was pretty goddamn pissed off, knowing that I have friends who died. And I went through what I went through, and others did. Because of The Rock. Partially because of the movie The Rock.
Yeah, the movie The Rock, not the person, right?
You might have to beep this, but are you fucking kidding me? The movie The Rock was partially responsible for us being involved in a war for almost 20 years. Like, I had no clue about this until I did this research last night. And I was truly just dumbfounded by this. Like,
So how does that work? Like they just like made up stuff and use this like what happens in this movie as the foundation of their lie? Is that what I'm understanding?
whoever this source was, if he was even real, yeah, made up stories based on stuff in this movie and fed it to British intelligence. Some people probably, and I can imagine, I've never been in totally high level meetings like that, but I've been in military meetings and I've been in other corporate meetings where sometimes there might be one or two people who are like, this doesn't really sound right. But you get enough fervor behind it, and the voices of those who are probably having some sort of common sense and saying, hey, maybe we should hold off on something gets drowned out. And next thing you know, later on, you go back and take a look at it in hindsight and like, oh, we probably should have listened to that guy who was saying something about this not sounding right. Like, I get that. Man, I can imagine it's even worse at very high level meetings like that. Like, Jesus. But, yeah. Like, if the source was even real, I don't know. Basically watched The Rock and was like, that's cool. And then.
That's crazy.
Yeah, like that's, I was floored when I saw that last night. Like, I really couldn't believe that. And then I had to look it up in several places. And yes, that is, just like I said, like the 9/11 Commission, the Warren Commission that investigated JFK's assassination. Like, we put together these panels, we call them commissions, that call people to testify and get all sides of everything before they come out with whatever truth. They're called inquiries in Britain, and yeah, the Chilcot inquiry. It's public record that
Yeah, it
the
was published
1996.
in 2016. So like this is a really recent development. Well, 9 years ago. A very recent development.
But like when I first saw this on like IMDb and then in Wikipedia, I was like, okay, this is why they say you can't use Wikipedia as a source, right? You got like I was like
You got to double check it.
I gotta look this shit up. Like there's no way this is real. Somebody's had a field day like writing this in, and then I checked like a bunch of other sources, and then I was like, holy crap, like this really happened.
And it ties to the Bond films because of MI6. So this is a very timely discussion.
So as we move on to other things, I had to get that out there now. Like that really upset me. Also, Quentin Tarantino and Aaron Sorkin were uncredited script doctors on this.
Really?
So they helped punch it up and give it that panache. And what you saw was partially because of those two. Also, a bunch of Nicolas Cage's stuff was uh, why is my brain not working right now? Unscripted.
Mm.
And him and Sean Connery both had some say in how their characters are. All right, so what did you think of the intro here? Where we get the very first intro, we get some helicopters flying around. Basically, uh, you're hearing like radio chatter of like some people being left in Vietnam that unfortunately don't make it back. We could see Ed Harris putting on his dress blues as a Marine. He's going to his wife's gravesite.
Mm-hmm.
We see the absolute stack of ribbons that Ed Harris has as Brigadier General Hummel, who's been a Marine since at least the Vietnam War. So at the time, that was well over 30 years. As they state later in the movie, I think he said 3 Purple Hearts, 2 Silver Stars. He had a Congressional Medal of Honor, which he left on his wife's grave. What did you think of the intro here?
So I didn't know much about this movie, so I thought maybe Ed Harris was going to be one of our hero characters we were going to follow because of, like you're getting all this, say, like fanfare at the beginning with him and like him putting on, like you said, his dress blues and all of the acolytes, accolades or ribbons that he has on there that you're like, okay, this guy's pretty decorated. And yeah, I thought the opening overall was very. It took me a bit to kind of understand where we were going with this, because then not long after this, it kind of cuts to the like Nick Cage of it all, right?
Yeah.
So then I'm sitting around like, okay, so I don't know where we're going with Ed Harris yet. So that was kind of a interesting opening here. Felt very 90s, I'll say. This was a very 90s.
Yeah,
opening.
this is a 90s. This is a 90s ass movie. Like, there's no other way to put it. This is a 90s ass movie. Okay, next question concerning Ed Harris and General Hummel. Did you find him to be somewhat sympathetic at all once you found out his motivations for what he was doing and why he was doing it? Understanding like what he did was wrong. What he was doing was wrong. But did you find any like sympathy in him for once you understood what he felt was justification for what he did?
Yeah, I would say like he's not even like the main villain, I would say, in this movie, right? Because like there's times where he is kind of like the like level-headed he is the leader of his men and he is pulling um he's trying to be, I would say, level-headed with what their plans are. He has this plan that he is doing, um but it turns out to be I felt like he left his men in the dark a little bit on what he was going on, so they started kind of almost like a mutiny against him, right? So like at the end of the day, I felt like I couldn't even really hate Ed Harris or his character because I felt like you said, he was sympathetic. What he's doing is wrong, obviously, but it seemed
Yeah,
like he didn't plan for it to go the way that it was setting up for him to go. It was like pretty much a big threat that he was empty threat almost that he's trying to do here.
yeah. I think definitely as the movie goes along, once again. So I'll say this as well. I think Ed Harris played General Hummel phenomenally. Um, from the kind of Marines that I've known, I can definitely see someone as a general. Um, like he played that Marine general very well, and like I can see that like that attitude, that demeanor that he has. I can definitely see that like that existing in real life. I can also understand, like I said, he did in the story. He's done a lot of stuff that he's done was black operation stuff, stuff where special operations things where they were sent to places they weren't supposed to be. They were doing things kind of off the books, but they were doing things for a greater purpose.
He like knows all of this
Oh,
classified information.
he knows all the secrets. He knows where he literally knows where all the bodies are buried,
Mm-hmm.
right? And this ties into something else, but it also goes back to our James Bond thing we talked about, where if you're caught, captured, or killed, like they kind of deny all knowledge about you. And that was his biggest thing was, he had a lot of men under his command that died, and their families weren't giving the correct information. Their families weren't compensated for their death. Uh, his words, he said they weren't even given a goddamn military burial. They were just basically killed and left to die and rot wherever they were killed. And it was unfair. And yeah, I think stuff like that happens. Um, I'm just like I'm sure, like with the MI6 or like the CIA. I don't know for sure, but I would imagine stuff like that happens. Once again, we go back to like the intro of Mission Impossible, where in the recording to Mr. Phelps, it states if you're caught or captured, they would disavow all the knowledge of you. You've seen many more James Bond films than I've had. Um, he's caught or captured. I'm pretty sure they don't send a lot of people in there to go get him a lot of times. Maybe they try and send people after him. Isn't in one of them? Wasn't he captured by like North Koreans or something? And he had to escape from a North Korean prison or something, pretty much by himself.
In one of the newer Bond movies?
I think so, or one of them. I think
I don't remember North Korea.
maybe it was a Pierce Brosnan one. I don't know.
It may have been. But yeah, it's pretty standard in those movies, right? Like we're not if it's going to
You know,
cause a dilemma, we're going to disavow you.
part of it is you kind of know and understand the risks you're signing up for before you go out there, right?
Yeah.
Not saying it's justified, but like those things are for a lot of times are pretty much explained. So yeah, next we meet Stanley Goodspeed, our FBI agent, who's a chemical weapons specialist, right?
Beatles head.
And they don't have a lot going on in his office at the time, so that this Rube Goldberg thing set up with some dart guns or whatever. It'd probably be Nerf guns today, right? But
Mm-hmm.
same thing. Um, yeah, he's a big Beatles head. I can imagine Nicolas Cage really is. I don't know for sure. Um, I didn't find this out till last night. He's actually related to Francis Ford Coppola.
Yes, yes, he is. Yep.
Um, did not know that. Went down a weird rabbit hole last night. Bunch of weird rabbit holes. Then also during this, he was Nicolas Cage himself was also kind of getting over CDs. He was tiring of CDs in the late '90s or the mid '90s, so he was starting to get back into LP collecting himself. So that was kind of something he added to this role as well
I think it's funny that was because that's a big reason why vinyl has made a comeback into today's world is because it does have a better sound quality. It's just not as easy to take with you like CDs and put in your car. Now you can't even put CDs in your car. So, but
Yeah,
so I thought it was funny that in 1996 he was already like there was this line already of like this is better than CDs because that would come almost 20 years, almost 30 years later. Vinyls are everywhere in like Target. Like they don't even have DVDs anymore, but they'll have vinyl records.
yeah. And not only that, but you'd be surprised how many records I deliver on a regular basis to people on my mail route. And like you can always tell because they're very firm. You can tell by the shape. And some of them are marked like vinyl, LP, please, do not throw, do not bend or break because obviously it's very fragile, right? But once you start recognizing like the shape and kind of what it is, like I see them all the time, especially to like a couple people who get them on a regular basis. But yeah, like I deliver a ton of them on a regular basis out there on my mail route. So yeah, this is such a 90s ass movie. We have Bosnian refugees living in the United States at the time, right? I went to Bosnia in 1999. Yeah, to Bosnia in 99. 98, 99. Wow. Jesus. Uh, um, so yeah, they get a package in that one of their dogs had kind of flagged. So they think it's possible sarin gas, right? So they get all suited up. They go in there. He's also training a newer agent, right? So he's like a senior guy. He's got a new agent with him. So they're going in there. They pop this crate open, right? They start pulling stuff out. They pull out something. Well, they pull out some nudie magazines. They pull out a gas mask. And the guy, his trainee, pulls out a baby doll. And then he starts messing with the baby doll. And that sets off the chemical weapons and the bomb. And we're like 15 minutes into it, and we got our kind of first tense situation. The chemical weapons are starting to eat away at the suit. They've got like 2 minutes before the bomb goes off. The spraying in the spray down in the room isn't working properly, right? They've got to evacuate. And then the guy gets freaked out, right? I'd say rightfully so, because it's probably his first time seeing the atropine injector. And he's like, "You want me to take this and stick it into my heart? Are you effing crazy?"
That's a
What did
normal
you?
reaction, by the way. Like, I feel like in all these movies where they do have like the big thing they have to stick in and they just effortlessly do it, it's
Yeah.
like, no, I agree with this guy. It's like a whoa, 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 whoa.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. Like, yeah, like you see something like that, and you're like, "Wait a minute, you see how big this damn thing is? Are you crazy?" So, what did you think of this whole situation here?
Yeah, I was kind of like thrown off on what was happening. I thought maybe this would be the start of like the actual um like plot, I guess. But like it still is more like a getting to know Nick Cage and his character and what they do, right? Like this is to set up on what he's able to do, why he is an expert in his field and why he's going to be somebody that would be called into what they're going to face on Alcatraz. But man, when that thing was like corrosive and like starting to, I thought we were going to lose that guy at least. I was like, I know Nick Cage is going to be okay.
Yeah,
We got the rest of the movie
this
here.
case should be good, but this other guy, like, yeah, the first time I saw it too, I was like, yeah, this guy's probably not meant for this movie. He's gonna die. He's probably gonna die here soon. So glad I didn't get to know him too well. He didn't. He managed to live, but
But he wants to leave, right? Isn't he like looking for a new job or
yeah,
telling?
after this, he says he's gonna go into the private sector and help make like roach motels for a chemical company or something. So for Nicolas Cage, yeah, I think it cuts to a couple scenes later. He takes the rest of the day off after that. I'm pretty sure there's probably a couple reports he had to write. Probably did his thing. And then he's like, "Yeah, I'm clocking out for the rest of the day, guys. Like, taking a long weekend. I gotta go. I gotta go calm down after this. Next time we see Nicolas Cage, he's sitting there naked playing the guitar,
I
contemplating
was
his life. Right.
I was surprised they let him go home. Honestly, I thought they might have to put them in like quarantine or something.
Well, look, I'm pretty sure there was probably some protocols of like
Right,
scrubbing
right.
down, and once they were able to identify whatever it was and everything. But yeah, after that, like, yeah, like I'm pretty sure like we'll call you if we need you for a couple of days. Like, yeah, go ahead. And that's a pretty tense situation to deal with. Like, can't just come back like the next morning and clock back in. Hey guys, how's it going? Coffee mug in your hand, right? We meet Vanessa Marcel, his fiance, who they're on opposite sides here because they both have big news, right? He goes first. He's kind of traumatized, rightfully so, about what happened, and he's talking about how why would you bring another a child into this world and bring another human life? It's selfish. And of course, that's the perfect time to find out that his girlfriend is pregnant.
Yeah.
And then I think this was a great exchange. If she's like, "Did you really mean everything you said? What are you talking about?" And she tells him, he's like, "I don't know." He's like, "You said it 7.5 seconds ago." He's like, "Well, a
Yeah,
lot can
because he said
change.
in the
What's
moment.
happened in
He was
that
like, I
seven and a half?
believed it in the moment.
A lot's happened in that 7.5 seconds. Like, um, have you ever seen Vanessa Marcel in anything else?
She looked so familiar. I was really trying to figure out where I know her from.
Unless you've maybe seen General Hospital. She was on a soap opera for a while. She's done Melrose Place. She took over as the quote unquote vixen on Melrose Place after like Tiffany Amber Thiessen left. She did a TV show called Las Vegas that had Josh Duhamel, whatever it is. I can't pronounce his last name. The guy from the Transformers movies,
Yeah.
which I loved that show when it was on, but it got canceled on a
It's still
cliffhanger.
like I feel like it's still randomly played on TNT at times. I'll just be browsing. And it's like Las
Yeah,
Vegas.
yeah. TNT.
It's awesome.
That is a TNT ass show. It was on syndication on TNT. That's another thing we missed out on cable because, like I said with movies, sometimes it's 6:17, right? There's nothing else on, and you might be scrolling through, and you might see like a TV show like that
Right.
or a movie like this, and it's like, oh, she's kind of hot. Let me see what's going on here. Or like okay, so with the show Las Vegas, it had a bunch of pretty people in it, right? James
Yeah.
Caan played this casino owner or a guy who ran this casino. Josh Duhamel, great tie in here, played a Marine coming back from his time in Iraq, who was head of security at this casino. Vanessa Marcel played the casino hostess. Nikki Cox played I think she was another casino hostess. She worked somewhere in there. David Ledger, black guy, played another security guy with Josh Duhamel, and then they had a female pit boss that was called Ice Queen. I can't remember what her name was, but she had a tendency to, if once people were on rolls, she had a tendency that she could go around to where like the craps tables were, the blackjack tables, wherever these people were playing, and somehow she would ice them down. Like they'd start, like the winning streaks would come to an end. But it was about their adventures, like running a casino, and it's all these good-looking, sexy, beautiful people, right? And I watched it, and I was like, I'm gonna move to Las Vegas. And then I looked in the mirror, I'm like, I'm not moving to Las Vegas. It's not
I think I must have seen her in this show because I did watch episodes of it, not like all the time, but I did watch a few. So I feel like that is where I would know her from.
Yeah,
Because the rest of them is not something I watch. She was in an episode of Spin City, but I'm bet I'm not remembering her from like one episode of a sitcom.
yeah.
So
She's done some Hallmark movies, so I don't know if you and your wife watch those. Like you might, but I mean, it's a Hallmark movie, so in all fairness, like they're all kind of the same in some aspects. So if you've seen one, you've probably seen a bunch. They all might run together, especially the holiday ones. that people have made fun of the last couple of years about somebody, some lawyer or some executive goes back to their hometown, finds some dude working in a candle shop or some lumberjack and falls in love and realizes that they need to go back to their hometown and get back to their old ways. Like, they even Hallmark's in on the joke now. They make fun of themselves online about their movies. So she was she was one of those mainstays. And you might have been too young. She was in like your FHMs, your Maxim magazines a lot because she's a very beautiful woman. Like, don't get me wrong. So she's been in she appeared in a lot of those in the late '90s, early 2000s. They had a rotation of like 10 women that you would see. Pamela Anderson was one of them. Jenny McCarthy was in them a lot of times, stuff like that. She was engaged to Brian Austin Green. I think she had a kid with him before they split up. That dude's kids with her, Megan Fox. What the hell's going on with that guy, man?
Also, just to correct your pronunciation of Josh's name, it's Josh Duhamel.
Yeah, like I know I've never been able to get that name right, but like I was like, yeah, they know who I am, the dude from Transformers.
Yeah,
who honestly probably should have had a better action movie career than he did. Like, I don't know what happened.
And now
I know he's still
he was hosting. He was just hosting some like CBS reality show recently too, Buddy Games or something. He was
I know
on
he
there
had that
too.
movie. He had that movie that came out with Jennifer Lopez a couple years ago. I think it was Destination Wedding or something like that. But you would think, especially after Transformers, I would have made him a bigger action star.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened. It's unfortunate. He did like the first 3 or 4, and then I don't know what happened to him.
But that's funny. That's like this is like 6 degrees of separation then, because you have Vanessa Marcel and her co-star was Josh Duhamel, who is also appearing in Michael Bay movies, the Transformers movies. Back to Michael Bay, who directed this movie.
Yeah, and then you get there's a lot of ties to a lot of stuff here. So they decide, she proposes to him because either she says it here or she says it later in another scene. She's Catholic and she's pregnant and not married, so like it's not going to work for her. But yeah, they decide they're going to get married, right? We see General Hummel putting his plan into action. He shows up to a Navy weapons depot for a surprise inspection. While he's there, they decide they're going to steal a bunch of VX gas rockets. He wants 16. He gets out with 15 because one of them breaks open. And once that happens, I think this was a great scene to show us the danger of this VX gas, right? Because otherwise, like, we don't necessarily know what it does. We hear it's bad, or we'll get gist of it. But this scene and the loss of one of those Marines is a great way to be like, okay, this is what people need to be scared of. Where once that little ball drops and breaks, and they bleed and they have to see that one guy in the room, and we see his skin just bubbling up and corroding off. Like, that is unbelievable.
Yeah, and they like have to shut him in, the one guy in, and
yeah,
yikes.
I think I didn't realize this until now, like literally just a couple seconds ago. We also get more of an understanding of the kind of person that General Hummel is, because they went, and when they go into this base and they steal the rockets, they use the non-lethal means to do everything they did, right? The only person who died is the one Marine who unfortunately had to be locked in after the gas was exposed. But they used darts, they used like beanbag guns, beanbag pellets, and stuff like that. He didn't want to kill any of these Marines, and he made I'm pretty sure that was probably his plan not to. Of whatever we do, we have to do this by non-lethal means, and not
especially what we know from the end, right? Like,
everything that happens later on, and then we get the line from Sean Connery later of he's not a killer. I saw it in his eyes, but I didn't realize it. He kind of showed us that earlier in the movie. He shows us that here because they those guys could have went in and just laid waste and left bodies laying all around, right? Like every single one of those guys could have been dead.
Mm-hmm.
But they it was a very purposeful plan not to, right? So we see that at some point we get introduced to Alcatraz Island, right? AKA the Rock, probably the most famous prison in our country's history. Um, and we see a park ranger because Alcatraz is run by the National Park Service. That is accurate. As a matter of fact, most of The Rock was shot on location in Alcatraz, in the prison on Alcatraz Island. It's governed by the National Park Service. It's not totally possible to close it, so much of the filming had to accommodate tour parties. Also, the scene in which the FBI director Womack is thrown off the balcony was filmed on location at the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco. Led to a lot of calls to the hotel from people who saw a man dangling from the balcony. Also, the closing scene was shot outside the Sacred Heart Missionary in Satakoy. So I had to work around tours going up there. Sean Connery wanted he wanted to know if they could build him a cabin on the island because what was happening was they're filming on the island every day, right? But they're staying on the mainland, so they have to get up early. They have to take a ferry. They booked out these ferries, right? They have to take a ferry. They have to get there early, get on the ferry, take the ferry over the island, unload the ferry, then go through all their process, right? That's adding time. Connery tried to get cabin built so he could stay there. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to, but he just ended up staying in his trailer a lot of the time just so he didn't have to take the ferry back and forth. I mean, that's it's probably, I'm pretty sure they were staying in great accommodations and fairly close. That's just a lot of extra time.
Yeah.
Have you ever been to San Francisco?
No, it's on my list though. I really want to go there. Especially there's like a Walt Disney Family museum there. But also, well, one, I have the goal to hit every baseball stadium, and that one looks amazing. By the way, with hitting the balls on the water and all that. So
Yeah,
it's on my
McCovey
list
Cove right there
for
and everything.
sure because
I,
it
I
looks
want to
awesome.
go. I want to go for all the dorky tourist stuff. Like I want to go to Alcatraz. I want to go to the pier. I want to go across the Golden Gate Bridge. I want to take a
Right.
cable car, right, and stuff like that. Like I want to do all the dorky tourist stuff because that's just the kind of person I am. So we see Hummel and a couple of his people. Also, we get a further glimpse into the kind of person that General Hummel is because he sees that there is a tour group with children from an elementary school. It looks like there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he gets a couple of the girls from the tour group and lets them kind of gives them a heads up that tells them that they have to get their teacher to let them know they have to go back. And I don't really remember seeing any children the rest of this movie, so I'm assuming somehow they probably did. Before him and his Marines, who are now turned mercenaries, end up taking over Alcatraz Island. Excuse me.
Pleasure.
Because it's run by the National Park Service, right? The
Mm-hmm.
park ranger explains he's not allowed to have a gun. That's not their part of their job. They just kind of give tours and make sure bears don't take picnic baskets and things like that, right? But our Marines come in and barricade the island and take it over and put everybody in cells, and they're there for the next couple of days. It's gotta suck. Horrible tour. 1 star would not return. So I also just thought of. I'm pretty sure there's probably like a class action lawsuit filed against this. to file it against the government. Like, what happens here? Because
Yeah, seriously. It's like you guys didn't have enough security to stop a terrorist attack while we're in Alcatraz.
well, so okay, so I'll also say this: this is well before 9/11, right? So like, this was a whole different world back then.
Yes, yeah.
Um, Also, so you got all these people in various cells because one thing they do is they open up the cells, they give people a chance to go in the cells to experience what it's like to be in these cells on Alcatraz Island. Something they still do today. I think they even do night tours because Alcatraz is supposedly haunted, right? And gives you a chance to experience something like that. I don't know if the bathrooms in those cells work, right? So I don't know if what was the bathroom situation going on for that 48 hours or so, right? Like this is
Probably
something that just popped in my
stank
head. Like,
so bad.
well, no, like I don't know if they worked. Were they? Hummel seems like a reasonable man, right? Let's be realistic here. He may be extreme in some of his views. We don't agree with everything he does, but as I said, we see what kind of person he really is deep down inside, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as people are saying, like, hey, we need to use the bathroom or something, is he allowing these Marines to take them? Because I'm sure, as a tourist, saying there are bathrooms there for public use. Is he allowing them to go? Like, is he taking them, cell by cell or at certain intervals to go use the bathroom? What about food and water for those 2 days?
Right.
Like, is he going to starve these people out? Did they just raid the snack bar and just like, hey, unfortunately, this is all we have? Like, I don't know. These are weird things I think of because my brain works in weird. uh, we get a Pentagon briefing, right, where it's brought up that we get an explanation of who General Hummel actually is, his service in Vietnam, right? Um, what he's done. Uh, we get his first call back to the Pentagon explaining his ransom demands and various other things, right? Um, we get the 30-year-old who is like, we never, we never publicly stated we went into China, and then he's like, basically, he's like, somebody shut this kid up, like, uh, and as you said, like, he knows about this magical slush fund that they use to like from black from weapon sales to illegal places and things that he puts out to like FBI director, which I would think the FBI director might have knowledge of that. I don't know. They might keep he might not because they can give him plausible deniability.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's something I learned about from what started this whole podcast of Independence Day,
Right.
where in Independence Day where he was president asked why wasn't he briefed on like Area 51, and they're like, yeah, it's plausible deniability, and then I had to look it up, and then you find out, hey, he can legitimately say like, look, I had no information about this is going on, and it gives him the opportunity to say, hey, he legitimately didn't know. Um, certain things are kept from certain people for a reason. Um, he wants his money. He wants a certain amount of money. He's got a plan to take his people to a non-extradition uh, country, and they're going to get paid off. And then we meet our other Marines. This is where we meet Ted C. McGinley. This is where we meet King Woodbine. This is where we meet Tony Todd and all these other various Marines who are now mercenaries. Once they find out what it is, they start trying to come up with a plan. Like, okay, what are our options? Your options are very limited because apparently VX gas is made so that it's very difficult to destroy. There's probably only one or two things that are capable of destroying it. And as we find out, it's still in the test phase. It's not even like ready to go yet. But that's something that they now have to use. But they decide they're going to send in a Navy SEAL team. So they also get they call up Goodspeed in a they call him up at a bad time, horrible time for him to get that call. He's in the middle of some sexy time with his fiance,
Yeah.
like literally right in the middle of it. I love this conversation of like they know I'm home. How do they know you're home?
It's the
It's the FBI.
FBI.
Like he works for the also he works for the FBI. I'm pretty sure they know where he is. Right.
Right.
Um, also, 90s ass thing. Did you see the size of that phone?
Yeah. Those
Um,
are flashbacks.
so we find out they need him downstairs in like 10 minutes, right? He thinks he's going for a training exercise. He thinks he's going out there, probably run some people, do some things, spend a couple of days, put him up in a hotel. When I was in the military, we called it TDY, temporary duty, right? You get to live in a decent hotel for a couple of days. You get a per diem based on how much, based on the cost of living in that area. So as a matter of fact, I when I went up to up north to another part of Northern California a couple of years ago, to help out a post office up there, I didn't get put up in a good hotel. I got put up in a hotel. I got paid gas mileage to go up there. And I got paid like $70 a day for food and incidentals, right? You don't get it all at once, like you get it weekly or something. So like, but that money's yours regardless. So if you know how to like do what you're doing, you can make a ton of money off just that, right? And then typically you probably get paid extra in your pay for going TUI, something like that. So he's thinking, oh man, I get a couple days off. I get to decompress after almost dying here and figure out what's going on. Figure out what's going on with my fiance, who I just found out is pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
So he decides, hey, he's gonna have her go in, check into the room, have some room service with her. They'll get like a free little mini vacation out, right? If he gets there, he finds out it's not a training exercise because he finds out what it's for. It's for VX gas. But Nicolas Cage's character, Dr. Goodspeed, is just wired, this weird wired brain where he knows like the history behind all this and starts going off on how they found it by accident. And just like champagne, they found that by accident.
Mm-hmm.
And the FBI director Womack there is like, let's get back to the gas. Like he's a no nonsense kind of person. He's the director of FBI. He doesn't have time for all this nonsense. Like let's keep it on track here. What did you think of our introduction to like director Womack and the various people at the Pentagon here who have secrets that they don't want to expose to things?
Yeah, they are annoying. I would say, because like they are, I would say, most of the reason why this movie takes place at all, right? Because of these classified secrets and because of what they've done and what Hummel is kind of raging against the machine against. Um, and right, Womack is the one, right, that had previously caught
Yeah,
uh
Mason. But we'll get
Mason,
to it.
right? Okay.
Yeah,
So um I thought that was interesting that they gave somebody like, there's these two characters that have like a very shrouded history that goes back a long time that we never really get to see, right? It's just always alluded to. So I thought that was interesting that they gave um that to somebody that we don't spend a lot of time with Womack.
yeah, and I have to imagine that if you work your way up to be like director of the FBI, you've obviously had a very long and distinguished career in the
Right. You would
FBI, right?
hope. Not
Yeah,
always the case nowadays, but yeah.
I was gonna say you never know with how things are going now. Have you ever seen the movie Don't Look Up?
No, the new one on Netflix? No, I haven't.
Yeah, pretty interesting. Meryl Streep plays a, I can't even say fictionalized. She plays a version of a president that you might recognize, possibly to the extreme. Um, she picks a sheriff
Mm,
that she had an affair with um, to be like the next Chief Justice of the Supreme Court.
that's crazy.
Is it?
I mean, it not crazy that it happened. Crazy. Well, not like impossible nowadays, but I would say still crazy to actually do that. Yeah.
So you would think that you have a very long, distinguished career. You probably know where a lot of the bodies are buried, right? Just like, okay, you might know where a lot of the bodies are buried, but different kinds of bodies and different secrets based
Mm-hmm.
on you're in the FBI as compared to like military operations. So your level of secrecy and things that you have knowledge of are going to be way different than the people than the generals that were in that briefing in the Pentagon, right?
Right.
Because as you see, like they knew about obviously stuff that happened in wartime, various countries, but he didn't know about that. That he didn't know about that slush fund because that was that's a different thing. But he also knows about, as we will get to, Mason, and I'm sure he knows about other things, right? So, they get out there, they get to San Francisco, they set some stuff up on the wharf where they're keeping an eye on Alcatraz Island, um, and they bring in they bring in. Uh, so at some point, they're as they're getting briefed, they find out like they don't have a lot of blueprints. They don't really have a way to get into the island, right? But one of the other FBI agents there that has worked with Womack is like says we may have a way to get you guys into the island, and we have a hush hush meeting with those two of like he doesn't exist, and he's like, I knew this was going to come back to bite me 30 years later or whatever. And this is where we get introduced to Mason, Sean Connery's character.
Mm-hmm.
Of he stole a set of microfilm at some point, right? He was placed on Alcatraz. He's the only man to ever escape from Alcatraz Island. Although, according to public knowledge in this movie, he never escaped. But
Right.
they know, the people who know, he actually escaped from Alcatraz Island. They captured him later. They attempted to get him to tell them where the microfilm was. He refused. He's just basically been in jail on no charge, like ever since, because he has microfilm and information on all of our government's biggest secrets from the last like 50 years. And they know if they let him out, he has the capability of putting those secrets out. So they can't let him go. Now, this is a fun part for me. I know you are not a fan of theories to go with films, fan theories and various other things, right? The last time we talked at the end of the last episode, talked about how they say this is maybe a shout out and possibly Sean Connery's uh his last his way of playing James Bond for the final time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can go online, and I don't know if you probably have not. You can go online and look up a lot of things, and some things will say it doesn't necessarily match. Some things will say there's a lot of ways to uh, that this would match up with Sean Connery being James Bond and that he was caught by the Americans, right? And he this is basically we captured James Bond, right? So I sent you a link. At some point you can check it out. It's from
Okay.
Screen Rant. They're not always the best they're not always the best source, right? It's people like me and you who enjoy writing for a living write a lot of these articles, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a lot like look, you may not like it or agree with it. I like after watching this movie many times, like to me, yeah, this is James Bond. They captured 007 and he's been in jail rotting away since then. And a lot of it does if you think about it in certain ways, a lot of it does line up and would work. Once again, we've seen from the one James Bond movie I've seen, especially with Dame Judi Dench there, she's not playing around. If you're captured, you're probably just shit out of luck. Like, hey, sucks to be you, but later, man, someone else is gonna have to roll in and be the next double O, and so on and so forth. If you don't think And I think in one of the earlier James Bond movies, I think maybe in the first or second one, I think there was a scene where Sean Connery was leaving from Alcatraz Island or something like that. I don't know. Like I've read so much stuff on this last night. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
it's really jumbling together. It could be delirious, right? I don't know. Could be some anger. Could have been some anger from that whole thing I
Yeah.
saw on the report. Not gonna lie, but yeah, to me, this is James Bond, and we got the original one. This is Sean Connery. This is James Bond. We captured him. He's been in jail for 30 years, and this fits with the whole idea that 007 is actually just a code name, and there's other people that fit that just slide into the 007 role. So I'm sticking with that. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
I'm fine with theories like that. It's just I don't like when people like it's fine for headcanon stuff, but I it drives me nuts when people try to say that is for sure. Like there was I don't know if you ever seen the Pixar theories,
Yeah,
right? Where people are like, this person is actually like what was the one that like one of the
all the
stories.
movies are connected, and
Yeah, they're just like fun Easter eggs, but a lot of people take that so seriously. Where they're like, this person is Boo from Monsters Inc. grown up, and she's doing this and that, and it's like, no, I'm sorry,
but I
that's not.
think, and maybe the people make the movies. I think they've rolled a lot of that into the movies, though.
They
Like
don't though. Like they really don't. Like it's just like they like to put a little nod to their projects in there, but there's no story connection to any of these projects.
I don't think they made a story connection initially, but I think it makes sense of the story connection that's there. Like I haven't kept up totally with the Pixar theory. Like the last time I saw it was probably about 5 or 6 years ago, and I know in theory it starts with like Brave being or something being in the very beginning, and like the witch from Brave ended up being someone else, and like you
Yeah,
said,
yeah. That's all not like that's all messy stuff. That's not the thing.
but then like you said, there's the whole theory about ants or whatever, Bugs Life or whatever it
Bugs
was,
Life, yeah.
and cars, and that's how, and then somehow that's how we ended up on the ship in Wally. Cars taking over the world, and so on and so forth. I think it fit. Like once again, I've seen it very briefly. Like
It's a lot of
sure,
stretches. Like that person had to be an acrobatic to make some of those stretches.
in all fairness, I think you're just, I think, and don't take this the wrong way. I think you're too affectionate with some of the Disney properties and Disney in general. For you, I can see why you would not like that, and that would kind of maybe upset you a bit.
It's not just Disney though. It's like I don't know. I feel like sometimes people look for connections that are not there. Like I feel like sometimes like there's the whole Rugrats theory that is absolutely absurd as well, where like it's people like to make these theories and like put dark twists on children media for some reason when it's never been the intent. Like the Rugrats theory, if you don't know what that is that all of those babies are actually just in Angelica's head because they've tragically died. And Angelica's just talking to nobody the whole time. Like that's BS. Like all that kind of stuff is just stuff where people are trying to make stuff haunted or sicker than it actually is. And it's a cartoon where babies are talking to each other.
Have you, what was his name? Uh, Richard Belzer. You've heard of Richard Belzer, right?
Yeah, Munch, right?
Yes, Detective John Munch. You know how many different things he has appeared in as Detective John Munch.
Yeah, Arrested Development. And all the Law and Orders, Homicide, Simpsons, I think.
It it goes
X
deeper than
Files.
that. It he's been in because he started out as a character in Homicide: Life on the Streets,
A Baltimore based show.
which also had our great captain Andre Brower, Captain Holt. He
Yes.
has been in 10 different television shows as Detective John Munch. just as this one dude, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, which actually like just connects those shows. And then unfortunately, that let's see, 20 years, 23 seasons. He's much has been in the only fictional character played by a single actor appearing in 10 different television series. Homicide: Life on the Streets, Law and Order SVU, Trial by Jury. He was on 30 Rock, X Files, The Arrested Development, a show on UPN called The Beat. He was on The Wire. Um, Jimmy Kimmel Live. Uh, he was mentioned by Detective Chief Inspector John Luther as an NYPD SBU contact in the TV show Luther, played by Idris Elba. He was in a comic book with Spider-Man and Deadpool.
A very
A
Brady
Muppet,
sequel.
a Muppet version in a Sesame Street sketch called Law and Order Special Letters Unit. Yeah, very Brady sequel, Sesame Street. Which I want to say at the same time. So it gets weird with that because I want to say Homicide: Life on the Street connected to, I can't remember the name of the show, but whatever the show was that had the kid with the damn snow globe, and it just
Oh
somehow all
yeah, Saint Elsewhere, right?
yeah, well the final episode was just this
It's
kid
all in
with
that
his
kid's head.
imagination. Yeah, but because like I think Homicide: Life on the Street was connected to that show, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then because Munch has gone out and done all these other various things, it has led to like basically all these shows technically being connected to that one poor kid's imagination. And I would love to see an update to that of what that kid's imagination with that snow globe is like. Because that is
See, I could also like, but that's the thing. So like, people will run with that, but like, I can also excuse that. Like, Homicide. Like maybe this kid watched Homicide one time, remembered Munch, and then put him in a Saint Elsewhere when he's dreaming up Saint Elsewhere. You know what I'm saying? So like, there's also those type of endings are just. I hate those type of endings.
and then you got Kenneth from 30 Rock, who's been alive for how long?
Been alive
Like,
for how long?
yeah. Have you ever watched 30 Rock?
I have, but I don't think I've seen it all the way through. I've watched like the first 5 seasons.
Oh, so in the finale, spoiler alert for like 20-year-old show. You know, okay, so you know how Kenneth the Page has made
Yeah.
like weird comments about like how long he's been alive and if he's been like if he's like immortal and stuff like he make these weird comments and people kind of chalk it up to like
Him being weird.
yeah, in the finale he's not weird. I want to say it's like 50 or 100 years in the future. It's like Liz Lemon's kid or grandkid is going to work there and Kenneth is now the head of NBC.
Oh, I thought he would still be a page.
No, he's like in charge of like network television and everything.
That's
Oh,
interesting. I'll have to. I've always been wanting to finish the show. I just haven't.
30 Rock. 30 Rock is a very underrated show. It was so awesome.
Talking about 30 Rock, let's get back to The Rock.
Yeah, I was going to. So
Just a
we
good
get introduced to Mason, Sean Connery with long, scraggly hair, right? He's been in jail for who knows how long. He's got to be in jail somewhere close to San Francisco because I mean they're on a limited time schedule here, right?
Right.
They only had like 40 some odd hours total. So he he reluctantly agrees. They bring him in, right? We get another FBI guy goes in and talks to him, and they're trying to offer him a deal to set him free. Basically, they need his information on how he escaped Alcatraz Island, so they can use that same information to get the Navy SEALs in. Right? Makes sense. He obviously does not trust anybody. We find out how dangerous of a man he is at some point. So they send in Dr. Goodspeed, Stanley Goodspeed, to go talk to him. To who, even though he is an FBI agent, he is not a field agent.
Right.
He is a dude who works in office. He deals with chemical weapons. He is very specialized in what he does, right? Let's be realistic here. They need him, right? if this dude ever has to leave his office, some serious shit is either going down or about to go down. If he has to leave that office in DC, like there's some bad stuff going on. There's no other way to put that.
Mm-hmm.
He needs to stay in his office at all times, not for his safety, but just because it's one of those people like that's what he does. So, but everyone doesn't also understand the gravity of what's going on because they don't want him to talk about the chemical weapons aspect, right? So Mason's still handcuffed. He gets him a cup of coffee. Goodspeed is Mason's able to read him that he can pretty much tell like this guy he's an FBI agent, but I don't want to say he's not a real FBI agent. He's not a field agent. Let's put it that way. I think that's the term he uses as well.
I can tell that too by the way he's stumbling through his words.
Yeah, right. He's not very confident in that aspect. As a matter of fact, he didn't even bring his gun with him. Right, he left it in his sock drawer, his underwear drawer. So he had to get a gun later on. But once again, like that's not really his place. Like,
mm-hmm.
Mason gets a quarter thrown at him. He uses that. He's able to mess with the edge of the quarter. He uses that to like scratch the glass and break the two-way glass. And that's where he sees the other guy. I can't remember. Womack. He sees Womack. That's where their history comes into play, right? But he agrees to help him. He gets a suite at the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco. He's going to get a haircut. He's going to get a new suit, right? He's going to get cleaned up. He's probably going to get some good food. So, like, might as well take advantage of the situation. At the Pentagon, they're still working on trying to get some stuff, right? They're trying to negotiate. Hummel doesn't want to negotiate. The Marines are setting up on the island, right? We get Ted C. McGinley's character. I'm just going to call him Dr. Cox. We get Dr. Cox's character, right? They're looking at all the points that these various people can come in. So trying to fortify and put security measures in place. He's also got his kind of own homemade thing that he has as a motion sensor that nobody will really know about. That will come into play later, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So they're back at the hotel, right? A whole bunch of FBI agents. I think they get the whole floor. Okay, cool. Mason's probably getting his first real shower in a long time. He orders up some room service to distract the FBI agents. Okay. He gets a haircut. This is where we meet your buddy, the barber there. Womack won't let him have scissors. And this is where I initially was like, really, they had to go with like the stereotypical gay hair. He's not even a barber. He's a hairdresser, right? They had to go with the stereotypical gay hairdresser thing. And he's got the very pronounced lisp and accent. It's very swishy. He's like, oh, would you tell Picasso he can't use brushes? And I'm just like, do they really have to do that? Like that was even in the late '90s, that was unnecessary. But it is what it is. He gets looking back like Sean Connery again, right? The Sean Connery we know and love. He has a couple minutes with Womack. He asks him to shake on it, but he's got a rope that he tied. And now he throws him over the side of the building. This is what we talked about earlier. When people called because they saw a guy hanging off the building, right? Goodspeed pulls his gun on him, but like, what's he gonna do? Really? We get a good chase scene here because then he leaves, chased through the building, steals a Humvee with some weird dude with an accent. This is my Humvee. I don't want to scratch on my Humvee or whatever. I don't know what kind of accent that was. But maybe it's a Cajun accent. I don't know. And of course, Nicolas Cage, Goodspeed there, steals a Ferrari. Right? Or he doesn't steal it. He takes a Ferrari. I forget the term they would use for that. Gets chased all through the city streets of San Francisco, right? They're hitting stuff, and they knocking people over, and they're trying to miss people. They hit a cable car, and I love that old black guy on the cable car. That guy was awesome. I just love that guy. Oh my God, my baby! Oh man, what the hell are they gonna do? But he eventually ends up After causing millions of dollars in damage in the city, they end up losing Mason. But Goodspeed has an idea. This is where he calls back to his buddy, who we find out is leaving to make the Roach Motels now. Trying to find out, hey, I need you to look up who was transferred to a prison in this state. They have records of the guy being in prison, but they don't have a name, right? There's no name. This guy's kind of been completely erased from history. But there is a address for his next of kin in San Francisco. I don't know why Womack would allow something like that to happen. It's not like if he died in prison, he's going to like notify his next of kin.
Right.
Like, your father that you really never met, that we took and threw into prison 30 some odd years ago, for no reason, or reasons that we can't tell you about, and never gave him a trial, is dead in prison. And we're sorry for your loss. Like, it's not. So he meets up with his long lost daughter. This also fits in with the James Bond thing of happened after a one night stand.
Womanizer.
Yeah. And what was it? What was it? A Led Zeppelin concert? Rock on.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey man, the 70s were a wild time, so hey. Although I can't imagine him like getting a martini after like a Led Zeppelin concert. Like,
yeah, see, there's a flaw there. There's a flaw in this theory.
Well, no, okay. Maybe they went to the concert. Maybe they went out to like dinner afterwards, and that's where he got the martini. I don't know. But obviously, Goodspeed finds him. He spares Mason because after the cops and all kind of police pull up and various FBI agents, his daughter thinks he escaped prison again, which technically he kind of did, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Goodspeed spares him any embarrassment with his daughter and just says, no, he's helping us with the case. We just lost track of him. And he goes on. Something he didn't have to do. So Nicolas Cage's character here is a bit hard. So what'd you think of the chase and the whole thing with his daughter and this whole aspect?
Yeah, I kind of thought that was going to happen with the not so much the chase part, but with Nick Cage, being like, oh, he's helping us, and then like kind of being able to put her Claire Forlani's character kind of giving
In a better headspace.
Yeah. Though like it doesn't take long after she leaves that Stanley like chews him out. So I'm like, all right, maybe wait a little bit longer in case if she's still in earshot. But no, I thought that was a good moment though.
Okay, so he's there with the Navy SEALs and he's looking at blueprints and he's trying to explain how to get in and what rooms are what. But the problem is he didn't go off of blueprints. Everything he did was from his personal knowledge of the island, right? And like his stuff was based on what he experienced there, and it was based off timing, based off a number of paces and what was visually in front of him. So he can't really like the bottom line is he can't really like give them directions like, hey, you're gonna go up to this T and you're gonna take a left, and then the third tunnel you're gonna go up to the third tunnel on the right, and you're gonna follow that, and then the second manhole cover up that you see, you're gonna take that, and that's gonna lead you to the laundry, right? He can't do that because he has to physically see. So he has,
which is understandable. Like there's times where I pull up like my iPhone map or something, and then like maybe it's like rotated a certain way where I almost don't recognize what I'm looking at, and then I'm like, no, that's not how I remember it. Sometimes you just have to go off like when you're actually doing the thing.
Look, for me, so we have what's called CCA, City Carrier Assistants, that are basically like when you first start off as the post office as a letter carrier, that's what you start off as on the city side. And so they do different routes on a regular basis, blah, 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 right? And like if I have too much work or I'm going to go past a certain time or I have to get a mandatory 8-hour day and I get one mandatory 8-hour day once a week, and they're going to give it to me that day, but it's going to take over, like the mail I have is going to take past 8 hours. They send like a CCA to come out. Right? and a lot of times it's just different people. I don't necessarily know them. So with some parts on my route, like I have to explain stuff to them as well. Like, okay, look, I have to break out like Google Maps and I have to show them like, okay, look, you're gonna park here, and then this is the route you're gonna take, and then there's other stuff I have to explain to them of like, hey, in this portion you're gonna look for this because this is where the mailbox is and stuff like that. Like, yeah, all that stuff isn't necessarily on maps and blueprints. So I completely get that. Now, Goodspeed is trying to show them how to like, hey, this is how you're gonna disarm the rockets, and this is what you're gonna do. He doesn't realize he's going in as well. Also, I think great scene of like, have you ever the Navy SEAL asked him, have you ever been in a combat situation? He's like, well, describe combat. The other guy explains it to him, and he's like, oh, you put it that way? No. Excuse me. And then he goes to throw up. Yeah, that's understandable. The very first time when we, going back to going in Iraq, before we crossed over the border, I didn't throw up, but it was definitely nerve wracking. And
Oh,
I
I bet.
had a not very religious, but before we crossed that border, we all had our time, and Chapa came by and said some words with everybody, and went off to by myself. I did have a prayer. Like I said, they always say there's no atheists in foxholes. So I'm not religious. I don't know what's out there after after life, but there was always a possibility I wouldn't have made it, and sometimes you got to cover your bases. So his reaction of going to that bathroom sink and throwing up, I'm not holding that against him. I can understand. Once again, this is not something he's meant to do, right? He's an FBI agent in name and in theory, but he is there for one specialty only, to disarm chemical weapons. Not to go in
Yeah, but I
after
mean,
some of the most badass Marines that we have.
well, and I think that's interesting too, is that like kind of seeing the difference between him, because there is he handles the bomb at the beginning under pressure pretty coolly, right? But it's like a
He's in his
totally
element.
different situation, right? It's
He's
a
in his
totally different
element. He's good.
situation. Yeah.
Um, but they pump him up, they give him some confidence, tell him he's got this. He tells them that his girlfriend's coming. They're like, hey, we'll get her. We'll bring her to the command center, which I don't think they would. They probably wouldn't bring her to the command center. But that's neither here nor there, right? Okay. Now the action starts. 3 helicopters, right? They send 2 off to kind of distract the island. The other one goes off that's going to send the incursion team. They make it in the island. But General Hummel, once he sees this, hey, there's 3 helicopters. I've lost track of one. Now there's only 2. He knows it's on, right? So now he sends people.
Mm-hmm.
So they go in. Okay, they're making their way. This was great when they get to the first kind of choke point, right? Where they get there and they're kind of in this locked room, but there's just this like boiler, and you get like gears turning and just flames spitting every like 2.5 seconds or whatever. And he's like, okay, how are we getting out? And he's like, well, I hope they haven't changed the time. He's like, you're going through there, and like they think he's gonna screw him over. They think he's gonna
Yeah.
either go in there and get killed, or he's gonna go in and he's gonna leave.
Leave him.
And they're like, damn it, I knew this was gonna happen. But Sean Connery, 007 here, is such a badass. He makes it through, opens the door. This is where we get the great welcome to the Rock. What did you think of like that whole aspect of like incursion on the island and them finally getting into Alcatraz?
Yeah, I guess I was kind of surprised that actually we were probably close to an hour in.
This was literally like the halfway point. I think if you include the
Right.
credits, because I paused it around the time, because I rewinded a couple times because that Welcome to the Rock thing kind of got me pumped up, gave me goosebumps. And when the time code came up, I saw this movie's like 2 hours and 15 minutes long. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was that long. Not in a bad way. It didn't really drag for me. We'll get your thoughts on it later. There
Mm-hmm.
wasn't anything where I was like, come on, let's hurry up, let's move this along. It moved at a good pace for me, but this was literally at like the 1 hour, 7, 6, 7, 8 minute point. It was literally like halfway into the movie where they make their incursion on Alcatraz Island.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked by that. Just knowing, the title of the movie and what it was kind of about, I thought we would have, that it would have um, been more like I thought Alcatraz, like them being in it, would have been a bigger part of the movie. There's a lot of setup in that regard to get to this moment. So I kind of was surprised that it was that. But
I can understand that, but I would also say too, I'm glad they didn't because I think the amount like the island plays a huge part in the entire movie, right?
mm-hmm.
But I think from like I said, this is literally like the halfway point of the movie. I
Right,
think if the Navy SEALs and Goodspeed and Mason end up on that island anymore, this would cause something to drag out. And now we're just like
right.
the movie wouldn't move at the great pace for me that it did. But I think building the tension up of the Marines setting up on the island, having to find Mason, get Mason, brief Mason, and everything else, get prepped up to go in there, and then you hit the island at the halfway point. I think, like I said, I think it moved at a good pace.
But I believed
Then,
in Sean Connery. I thought he was gonna get them in there. I never thought he was gonna ditch them. So he
but
seemed like an honorable guy. Yeah,
I can also understand their reasoning of like, oh man, he's
yeah,
gonna screw up. Like they have no reason. Honestly, they have no reason to trust this guy because they've screwed him over for like the last 30 some odd years, right?
right.
Like I don't know. If it's me, I might take the first chance I get to dip out. Like I'm not gonna lie. Like the thought would at least cross my mind. Like I can't act like the thought wouldn't cross my mind under those
Right.
circumstances. They make their way through, and eventually they end up coming up in what looks like the shower. I don't know,
Yeah,
but they also fall prey to the device that Dr. Cox there had set up, right? Nazi McGinley had set up, and so now they're actually about to be ambushed. We end up with a great scene where the Navy SEALs are there. You've got Goodspeed, Mason underneath in the sewer still, along with the guy who's following Mason. But everything pops off because you've got Hummel and his Marines, as he said, from an elevated and covered position. And they have an argument of stand down. And the Navy SEAL commander even says, look, I agree with you. I understand why you're doing this, but and he's right. I can't give that order. Basically, at that point, those men are traitors. So he can't, that's not an order he's obligated to follow.
mm-hmm.
I think this was also realistic from the aspect of a gunfight would break out from the smallest thing at this point.
Right.
From here, it's a guy leaning against the wall and a couple of bricks fell because it's Alcatraz Island. The island's like 80 years old at this time or something like that. So some bricks crumble, fall. That hits the ground, which causes a loud noise, which scares people. And next thing you know,
Gunfight.
firefight happens. Can I see that happening in real life? 100%. Tensions are high, nerves are on edge, and next thing you know, it doesn't take anything but the smallest thing, and next thing you know, now you're in a firefight. All the Navy SEALs are killed, all of them. Hummel is not happy by what happened here.
Mm-hmm.
He lets them know through the video camera, which I gotta say, the most unrealistic thing I think through all of this is how their communications and cameras are working through all these tunnels and various other things. If I take a
Right.
wrong step somewhere on my mail route, I might lose signal for a minute. You're telling me in 1995 they're getting crystal clear video footage that's going through sewer tunnels and everything? Come on. So what did you think of this portion now? Now that the Navy SEALs are dead. Actually, and also I think the Navy SEAL is ties back to one
Michael
of our
Biehn.
early movies. Yeah, Kyle Reese, John Connor.
Yeah, that was a shock for me because I knew he was in this movie. I thought maybe he would play a bigger role. I didn't think that these Marines would bite it so early and just pretty much leave Sean Connery and Nick Cage here.
Yeah. Like I was not expecting that either. Like, um, at this point, Connery nopes out. Mason nopes out. He's like, "Nah, I'm done." Goodspeed has to go after him. They end up having some words, but Goodspeed has to explain the situation to him. Like, look, there's rockets that have some horrible gas. He's almost threatening to shoot the rockets into San Francisco and explains how bad the gas is. It's his daughter and everything. His girlfriend is there. So finally, they're like, okay, let's do this. The Marines go down to the Navy SEALs. They see that one of the Navy SEALs' weapons and his communication device are gone. So now that they know there's other people still on the island. So now it's a chase. Now it's a matter of finding, as Hummel says, we have a rodent problem. Now it's a matter of finding the rodents in survey. They catch up with him a little later. Some more fireballs. Michael Bay likes fire and explosions and things. I don't know if you can tell. That just like John Woo has the doves in slow motion, Michael Bay used a lot of like fire explosions.
Right.
In movies. I'm pretty sure the Transformers scenes had a lot of those too. Basically, the movie is now the Marines trying to find Mason and Goodspeed and Mason trying to find the rockets. They find a couple. They destroy targeting chips, right? But also because the Marines are very good at what they do, they're keeping tabs and realize that whoever was guarding some of the rockets hasn't checked in. So now they know they're able to track where they are in other ways, right? So finally it comes down to Hummel has to take a hostage out, threaten to kill the hostage if he doesn't get his targeting chips back. So Goodspeed, kind of not sure what to do. Mason takes targeting chips, destroys them. I think there's 3 rockets left at this point, right? Tells Goodspeed, find the other ones. I'll do what I can to distract Hummel. So that's what happens. He goes out there. He ends up meeting up with Hummel, right? They have some words between the two of them. Hummel kind of recognizes him as a military man. And if you read that Screen Rant article, one of the first things explains that maybe Hummel knew who he was. Like Hummel might have been able to recognize him because I guess in one of the early, I think maybe even in the very first James Bond movie, Bond was in the Navy and he is killed, quote unquote, he's killed. And it ends up making like major news in the newspapers about this naval captain or whatever that's killed. So
interesting.
And Hummel was alive. Like Hummel was obviously alive and around doing his things during that point. So, like it ties all into the whole James Bond aspect. They capture him. Eventually, they end up capturing Goodspeed. Right? He's destroyed. He's able to destroy tracking things on one of the rockets, so now it's down to 2. They capture him. Hummel doesn't want him killed, so now they're thrown into a cell. One of the guys is a great line. I take pleasure in gutting you, boy. And this is a great scene. So you get Mason in one cell, Goodspeed in another. And they're talking between the 2 cells. And Mason is doing something. We can't really tell what he's doing up in his cell, right? He's fiddling with a bed and he's tying stuff and he's got some things going on. We don't know what he's doing. But then Goodspeed underneath is like, okay, so let me get this straight. You went through here, you did this, you waited 3 days here, you did this, and you did that. But just out of curiosity here, like, how in the hell did you get out of your cell? I don't know, because maybe we might be able to use something like that right now.
Right.
But he does manage to get out of the cell, right? Him and Mason have some talks because Mason at some point when he basically when he's captured by Hummel, he basically tells him like, "Look, I understand why you're doing this, but he's like, you're a lunatic." He straight out
Mm-hmm.
called him a lunatic. He's like, he can look at Hummel and he can kind of tell that Hummel doesn't want to do this. He doesn't want to kill what's going to amount to almost 1,000,000 innocent civilians, right? With this
Right.
gas and be known as like one of the worst traitors or history has ever seen. And this is where we get the line. He's like, he's a soldier. He's not a killer. I've seen it in his eyes. Oh, you've seen it in his eyes, right? Time is winding down. So back at the Pentagon and back in DC, they find out, hey, the planes are ready. They're loaded up. But there's still 2 rockets left. So they go. Time's winding down. A couple of the Marines are starting to get antsy
Mm-hmm.
because they have a bloodlust. Like like they haven't called. They haven't told him they transferred the money to this account that he wants. So they're like, hey, we have to show him what we're capable of. Eventually, Hummel kind of realizes like he has to show what he's capable of doing. Remember, they don't know because all communication was lost. They don't know how many rockets. They know he had 15 rockets to start off. They don't know like 13 of them right now are not functioning. They think he still has all 15. So Hummel decides he's going to shoot a rocket out. It's going to end up going to what we amount to be an Oakland Raiders football game because it's in Oakland.
Mm-hmm.
But Hummel can't do it. Sends the rocket out, changes course, changes the trajectory. Rocket splashes down in the ocean, detonates in the ocean. Marines are pissed. So now we're down to 1. What did you think of Hummel's change of heart
Yeah, I think this was. I don't even know if I would say change of heart. I feel like this was always like we said before at the beginning, how he didn't want to take out any innocent people. You know, like you said, they go non-lethal means. I feel like this was a big bluff here that, you know, he didn't want to ever have to fire any of these, and if he did, he would do what he did here, where it directs and reroutes, just to kind of like almost like a show of
here? Show of
strength,
force.
almost,
Yeah.
right? And hope that the U.S. would come to their senses and just pay them is what he's probably thinking, and get this over with. But um, I guess I was more shocked by the fact that these Marines were so like where they start almost turning on him because they want their money. They don't think it's going to get paid then. Um, and how they really wanted them to fire off the last rocket.
Yeah, so I definitely love Tony Todd in this scene, in these next couple scenes. I love Tony Todd in general. And we're going to,
Yeah.
at some point down the road, we're going to have at least one more Tony Todd movie, if not more. We'll see Tony Todd again for sure. Goodspeed sees it, so he knows there's only one. Um, Goodspeed and Mason they're going through, they're trying to find the last rocket. They come across the Marines basically having a mutiny against General Hummel and the major that's there with them. Like I said, they and Tony Todd's character explains it. He's like, we're not Marines anymore. Once we did this, we turned into mercenaries. He wants his money. Like, he was basically promised $1 million or so for this. Like, he can't go back at this point. He can't be like, sorry guys, let's just leave bygones to bygones and go back to being a Marine captain, right? Like he's best case scenario, he goes to jail for the rest of his life with no parole. Worst case scenario, he'll get the death penalty. But because he's in the military, they do have the death penalty, but they haven't put anybody in the military to death since like the 60s. The way the laws are set up, they can't just randomly pick a person. They have to go with whoever's been like they have to go with like whoever's been on death row the longest. They have to start from like number 1 and move all the way through. So even in this situation, if he were to get the death penalty, he'd probably spend the rest of his life because they'd have to kill the 30 or whatever people on death row ahead of him before they could give him the death penalty. So there's somebody who wants to get rid of that and wants to start those back up again coming here soon. We'll see what happens. Shootout happens. Pretty much everybody or a bunch of people get shot at. Hummel gets shot. They pull him off. He tells them where the last rocket is. Mason is engaged with one of the Marines. Goodspeed is trying to find the rocket. He's going after, he's followed by another Marine. Love the great one-liner here as he finds it, and he's got the stuff in his hand, and he's asking him if he's an Elton John fan. I don't like that soft shit. He's like, no, you like one, the Rocket Man. You're the Rocket Man. Tony Todd gets killed by a rocket and impaled on a spike. Pretty gruesome, but pretty awesome death.
Ouch.
The other guy catches up with him, but what ends up happening? Goodspeed has one of these VX gas balls in his pocket. He ends up throwing it in the guy's mouth, right? But he still has the atropine injector on him, so he has to stab himself in the heart. But then he realizes, okay, he's destroyed the last guidance chip. Like, everything's done. They gave him green flares earlier in the day to start off with. Now, let's cut back a couple minutes. The president has given the okay to basically destroy the entire Alcatraz
Mm-hmm.
Island. His thought process is, and he says in his little speech, how do you weigh the lives of 1 million people versus the lives of 81 hostages? It's not an easy choice. Basically, this is like the trolley problem.
That's what I was going to say, yeah.
Although I got to admit, I think the trolley problem on The Good Place might have been the best explanation of that. And seeing Chidi go through it was just so awesome. But it's basically a bigger version of the trolley problem. Kill a small number over here or kill a larger number over here. Like, it's not a good situation either way. Like, unfortunately, some people have to lose their lives. He gives the okay to basically destroy all of Alcatraz Island and Thermite. Goodspeed remembers he's got the green flares, right? So he's still got the entropine in his heart. Makes it out. He's got the green flares. He puts his arms up. The planes are going by, and at the last second they see, hey, I've got green smoke. But one of the planes manages to drop a bomb because of the timing as well, right? So they don't know what's going on. But once again, Mason's there to save Goodspeed for like the 4th or 5th time during the movie. He's pulled out. He manages they get communication back up with him, back to the FBI base there at the Bay. He lets them know, hey, all the rockets have been destroyed. Okay, everybody's good. They ask him about Mason. Goodspeed looks into his heart and is like, he was killed in the process as well. He's not here. Mason tells him. Mason is appreciative of him getting a second chance at life. Asks him if he travels. Tells him to go to Fort Walton, Kansas. He's like, I was thinking about going to Maui, I think you want to go to Fort Walton, Kansas. Before that, we get the FBI comes on the island. They meet up with Goodspeed. The other guy asks him, so what happened to Mason? He was obliterated. I think the other guy knows that he was killed. The other guy knows, but he's like, yeah, this guy's been screwed over enough. Like, he deserves this. Whatchamacallit comes on. I want to see his body. And he's gone. He got obliterated in the bombing. There's nothing left of him. That can happen? Yeah, that can happen to a body. He doesn't know any better. So
right.
He's done. Final scene we get. Cut to his girlfriend. We see her hand outside the window with wedding ring on. So they just got married. They're newlyweds, right? I think they got like I don't know if that was his beige Volvo or Volkswagen Buggy. I couldn't remember. She's got a bulldog in the front seat. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Love dogs. Uh, Mason gave him a thing that had a piece of paper in it that said whatever church in Fort Walton, Kansas, front pew, right leg or whatever, right? So he runs in there, pops it open. He steals from a church. He's sorry, but maybe he got married in that church too. I don't know. Maybe that's why they were in there. It's the microfilm that Mason had stolen. It has all the secrets that the government.
Who really shot JFK?
That's where we end our movie. Now,
Kind of ballsy to hide it in a pew, by the way, at an old church that could get knocked down at any. Anyway, like the thing is, there's nothing else around there at that point.
it could, but it's also like a place nobody's gonna stumble on that by accident.
Yeah, yeah.
Or if they do, it's gonna be
They're
like in
renovating.
30. It's gonna be like if they're renovating, and next thing you know, like they destroy it, and this film canister pops out, and somebody's gonna open it up. Like nobody's gonna find that by accident, right?
Right.
And also, if the FBI people are searching for various places that he has been, they're not going to think to go to St. Walton, Kansas, or Fort Walton, Kansas, and look in a church, right? So let's see. This is one of Michael Bay's favorite movies that he's made. Reportedly, Sir Sean Connery accepted the part of Mason after learning that Nicolas Cage had been cast as Goodspeed. There were tensions during shooting between Michael Bay and Walt Disney Studios executives who were supervising the production. On the commentary track for the Criterion Collection DVD, Michael Bay recalls the time he was preparing to leave the set for a meeting with the executives. He was approached by Sir Sean Connery in his golfing attire. Connery, who was also an executive producer on the movie, asked Bay where he was going. Bay explained he had a meeting with the executive and what was going on, blah, blah, blah. Connery says, "Hey, can I come along with you?" Bay says, "Sure." They get in the conference room. The executives think they're going to like chew out Michael Bay. Because remember, this is also only his second movie, right?
Right.
So at this point, he's not Michael Bay, the guy who can kind of do what he wants. He's still starting out, and they're like, most executives are probably thinking we can make whatever changes we want if we can get our way, because otherwise he'll never work for us again, and he may never be able to direct a movie again. It's his second movie. Like, what's he going to do to us? Next thing you know, who walks in with Michael Bay but James goddamn Bond himself. Appear behind him, according to Bay. Connery stands up for him and says he's doing a good job. Insisted, leave him alone, and then left him alone the rest of the movie. But can you imagine, like, you're just like, yeah, this is what, thinking like, this is like, nah, I'm not liking how this is going. This is what's going to happen. And next thing you know, goddamn James Bond walks in the room. Like, what can you say or do at that point?
Yeah, that's a pretty nice move by Sean Connery too.
He was a real mensch at that point.
No. Yeah.
All right. In June of 2017, director Michael Bay discussed his idea for a follow-up to The Rock. It never developed past the concept that Goodspeed and Mason. It's found out that Goodspeed has the microfilm, and the government comes after him, and he ends up having to find Mason, and they're chased throughout the movie by the government due to the possession of the microfilm. I wouldn't have mind seeing that like a couple of years later. Like, obviously we can't do it now. I guess in theory you could do part of it now. Goodspeed or Mason, obviously Sean Connery is no longer with us, and it's been so long. But and I know people don't like legacy sequels and stuff. You could maybe do something to tie it in where they find out somehow that he does have this microfilm, and you could continue on where now that he's left the FBI, it's 30 years later, right? So he's probably retired from the FBI by now, but it's found out, and now the government comes after him for this microfilm. Like, that could work. It'd be interesting to see. But in all fairness, I'm still waiting on National Treasure 3, so I don't see it.
Yeah.
Also, one last thing was, okay, so last thing to tie up the whole Bond thing, several theories that Connery's character is, in fact, an older version of James Bond. Sean Connery last played Agent 007 in an unofficial James Bond movie, Never Say Never, in 1983. But that was an unofficial one. Or Never Say
Yep.
Never Again. Um, Never Say Never Again is not an official part of the James Bond canon. And like I said, independent research can show multiple ties to support James Bond is Mason, and the timelines do match, but that's like you have to do the work on that yourself. Okay, IMDb rating 7.4. Rotten Tomatoes 67%, 85% on the popcorn meter. On Metacritic, 24 critic reviews. Got a 58. 214 user reviews. It got a 7.4. So seems more fans enjoyed this, probably for what it was, a good popcorn flick, a good action movie for the mid 90s, right? Good, decent premise, interesting things, a lot of action scenes. The beginning of Michael Bay's career. Critics probably not so much. I think Roger Ebert did enjoy it. I think I remember reading that Roger Ebert did enjoy the movie and gave it like 4 out of 5 or like 3.5 out of 5 or something. For me, obviously there is nostalgia tied to this movie for me. Once again, I've seen this movie many times, although not completely through, but a handful of times just because of different ways I've managed to watch it. But watching this movie last night, for me, I forgot how fun it was and how much I enjoyed it. I give it like a 4.5 out of 5. It was good for what it was, right? Like I said, good popcorn action movie. It's not Shakespeare. I don't need like my brain. I don't need to think through it. I don't need like to think about the rights and wrongs of the human race or existentialism or anything. Show me some explosions, some good action sequences. I'm a happy camper. I'm a simple creature. Like I don't need much. What do you say, Jordan? What do you?
Yeah, so we do the 5-star scale here. So I'm looking at my letterbox here, where I rank them in a list that you
I
can
have an
actually find in
idea.
our show notes as well. But
I have an
yeah,
idea of where you might put it, but
do you? I have it as, you gotta let me know if you were right or wrong here. I have it as 2.5 stars.
I had 3.
It's close to the 3, I think. Looking back at it, Face Off I have as a 3. Mr. and Mrs. Smith I have as a 3. Scrooged and Spaceballs are my other 2.5 stars that I've had so far here. I think it was fine. There were some things with the way that, like, I really do think the beginning took a bit to get going and get me interested. Um,
I can buy that.
and then the I don't know, like I just wasn't like really captivated by it. Michael Bay is hit or miss for me. It seems like I like some of his Transformers movies. Um, some of those I do not like. This movie I was like, oh, let's see how it goes. It felt like the opening actually felt very similar to Face Off and the John Woo stuff. Like that's what I mean by very 90s. Like the way that they were like, I don't know, the vibe and the way that they were cutting between stuff at the beginning, like with Ed Harris and stuff. I was like, this feels very like Travolta crying over his son type of energy. Um, but yeah, so I have it as 2.5 stars. That could raise, I guess, if I watch it again or something. But
I don't see watching it again, but
yeah,
like I
probably
said,
not.
I think it's of a different time. You were a lot younger at that point, so like I said, there's more nostalgia for me for it, and I get it. Why you may not have enjoyed it as much. I would have enjoyed seeing you during these times watching these movies then as compared to now. You know what I'm saying?
When I was 5,
If
or you
you
mean
were
like if I was your age?
if you if you were old enough to have watched these
Right,
a lot
right.
of these movies at those times, right? As compared to watching them now, you know, 20, 30 years past the
Hmm.
point and looking at it from a different perspective. Um, But I get it and I understand why. Like I said, I figured you maybe at the most you would give it a 3. So I was in the ballpark of what I figured you might do.
Yeah,
I kind of
close.
anticipate.
I was debating 2.5 and 3. So maybe I'm too harsh on it, Tay. I don't know.
What what stats do we have
Yes,
from?
we have some. I've added some, and actually, I have a correction as well for some of these. Michael Biehn has actually been in 3 movies we've watched. He was in an uncredited role for Grease as one of the jocks. So
I did not
I've
know.
added him as now 3 films: Terminator, Grease, and The Rock. So Michael Biehn,
Okay.
welcome to the 3 film club. um, Nick Cage is also now a member of the 3 film club, because he was in Face Off and he was in Into the Spider-Verse as the voice of Spider-Man Noir. So we have now 3 films for Cage, 3 films for Michael Biehn. We have.
I don't know why I thought Cage would have more than 3.
It does feel like it, but it has not been yet. We have Daniel. Okay, no, that's the last week. Okay, Sean Connery gets his first film, The Rock, on here. We have not had Connery yet. Tony Todd +1. Ed Harris +1, Vanessa Marcel, and Bokeem Woodbine and Claire Forlani +1. Some of those may appear again in other projects. I just added them in there. Those like the main cast,
Yeah.
really. If anybody pops up other than that, this is not an adaptation of anything or a franchise, so I did not have to give us any sort of +1s there. And this is a +1 for Michael Bay, The Rock, which, maybe we get more Michael Bay later on. I have not seen like Bad Boys or um,
I've seen Bad
any.
Boys. I haven't seen Armageddon.
Okay.
I haven't seen Pearl Harbor.
And then for main characters' first names by letter, a little fun thing I've been tracking here. We get a +1 for F, Francis X. Hummel. It's also our second Francis because of Francis Cross from Scrooged.
Oh wow.
We get another J for John Patrick Mason. And we get another S, Stanley Goodspeed. Those are the 3 ones I tracked in this. Letters that we still do not have a first name for is I, Q, U, XYZ. So we'll see if those ever cross our paths as we are going
Okay.
through.
Silly question on that. In the other James Bond movies, is there still a Q?
Yes, so I'm thinking we will get Q. I will
I was
probably
gonna say,
count him as a
does,
Q.
does even though that is not his probably technical name, but that is what he's called and
What we
referred to
know him
as
as.
throughout the movies,
Yeah.
would that count as his name?
I think so, especially since we know in Casino Royale, James Bond says M is short. It stands for this. I thought it was just a randomly assigned letter. So that means Q is probably also related to the name. Maybe.
I would say Quincy probably. I can't think of any other Q names. But
Quentin, Quinn. There's some names. But yeah,
so
so
yeah,
just a fun thing to track there.
if we do another James Bond, we will knock the Q. I guess we will knock the Q tile off the Scrabble board. But because I was wondering, like,
Yeah,
did that count as a name? Like, I don't know.
I can't remember if he's in Quantum of Solace, which. All right, so here's the thing. I was looking, that's what I was going to pick. It's not streaming anywhere, but you own it. I own it. So I think we're going to go with Quantum of Solace, which is the next in the James Bond movies. It just got taken off Prime, I guess, maybe at the new year. But if anybody's following along, I guess you could rent it or find some way to watch Quantum of Solace. Go to a library, rent a DVD, other legal means that you can do to find this movie, rent it, purchase it. So that's where to watch. Find it on your own. That's pretty much my answer for you on Quantum of Solace. Because then I started panicking. I forgot you own it, and I was starting to go through at the end here and like maybe pick a different movie. But since you own it, I think we're good.
I do own the disc.
All right, so next time we will do Quantum of Solace. which is the next in the James Bond movies. It's also, I think, the shortest. I think it's only like an hour 45. And it's probably what some people consider the worst of the Daniel Craig, I would say, or close to that. So really hyping the film up for you. So we'll dive into Quantum of Solace next time. Anything else before we head out?
No,
Any
I'm glad to
memes
be
from
back.
The Rock or anything?
No, I don't think there really were any memes that came out of it. I mean, I'm surprised with Nicolas Cage's facial expressions. Nothing did come out from this, but
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, there you go. There you have it. That's our coverage of The Rock, not the person, but the movie. And we will catch you next time when we talk the next James Bond film, Quantum of Solace, here on Films for the very first time.